The galaxy had known peace for 1,000 years. Between the shining worlds of the Auralis Empire, every planet bowed to the rule of the High Queen Seraphina, a being so wise and beautiful that even stars were said to glow brighter when she smiled. Her empire stretched across the stars, built on honor, strength, and the strange tests she used to choose her allies. Every prince from the outer systems had once tried to win her approval, and all had failed. But peace, as always, was fragile. It began with a silent shadow above the world of Alindra, a small blue planet at the edge of the empire. No one noticed the dark fleet until it was too late. Ships unlike any ever seen descended from deep space, their engines humming like whispers of death. They struck fast and hard, destroying everything in their path. The Auralis Empire had never faced such a ruthless enemy. Queen Seraphina stood before her council, her silver blue eyes glowing with worry. "They do not seek land or power," she said softly. "They seek to erase us." Her generals bowed, promising victory. But days later, thousands of soldiers vanished. Fleets were destroyed. The invaders seemed to predict every move. Some said the gods had turned against them. Others whispered of betrayal. Far away, in a place the queen would never look, a maintenance bay deep beneath the royal palace, a young human named Ethan scrubbed the marble floors. He was not a soldier, not a scholar, not a prince. Just a janitor from Earth, a world long forgotten after its fall in the Great Collapse. He worked quietly, listening to the distant sounds of war echoing through the royal city. He had been brought to Auralis years ago, traded as cheap labor. But Ethan had something the aliens didn't expect: curiosity. He watched, listened, and learned how their technology worked. While others ignored him, he understood the machines, the power grids, the pulse of the palace itself. When the palace trembled from another attack, Ethan saw panic for the first time in alien eyes. Even the noble guards looked afraid. The queen herself appeared on every holoscreen, her calm voice echoing through the halls. "Every prince has failed the test of courage. Now we face a test greater than any before. If we fall together." That night, Ethan saw something no one else noticed: a power conduit, flickering strangely near the palace's central chamber. He followed it through the tunnels, past glowing energy veins until he reached a sealed door guarded by drones. Behind it, he heard faint voices, alien generals arguing. He couldn't understand all their words, but one phrase made his blood run cold. "They know our codes. Someone inside betrayed us." Ethan froze. Someone in the palace had given the enemy access. He backed away, silent as a shadow, but one of the drones turned its sensors toward him. A red light flickered, and the alarm blared. Unauthorized presence detected. Ethan ran. Through dark corridors, down metal stairs, into the heart of the palace machinery. He hid behind a generator as drones buzzed past, searching. His heart pounded. He could hear their mechanical voices echoing through the tunnels. Then, the floor above him shook violently. Another explosion. The war had reached the city. Through the smoke and falling dust, Ethan saw a vision he would never forget. The queen herself, surrounded by her glowing guards, stepping into the firelight. Her armor shimmered like starlight. Her face was calm, too calm for a world burning. Their eyes met for a brief moment. She looked at him. Just a janitor. Dirty and frightened, but there was something strange in her gaze. As if she saw more than just a human worker. "Run to safety," she said softly. Her voice carried a weight that made the air tremble. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he pointed toward the flickering conduit. "Your palace systems. They're being used against you," he shouted. "It's not an outside attack. Someone here is helping them." For a second, everything went still. The queen's expression changed, from calm to shock. Before she could respond, the floor beneath them split open. A burst of energy threw Ethan backward into the smoke. He hit the ground hard, ears ringing. When he looked up, he saw the queen surrounded by light, shields flickering, enemies closing in. And as his vision blurred, he heard her voice again. Not through his ears, but inside his mind. "Who are you, human?" Then everything went black. Ethan woke to silence. His head throbbed and dust covered his face. For a moment he thought he was still in the tunnels, but when his eyes adjusted, he saw he was lying in a small metal chamber. The ceiling above him shimmered with soft blue light. The air smelled of strange herbs and electricity. He sat up slowly. His gray uniform was torn and burned, his hands trembling. Across the room, a glowing screen pulsed gently, showing strange symbols he didn't recognize. He realized he wasn't alone. A tall alien guard with silver armor stood at the door. The guard's eyes glowed faintly. "The human wakes," the guard said, voice deep and cold. "You are lucky to be alive. The Queen ordered your recovery." Ethan blinked. "The Queen saved me?" "She commanded it," the guard said, and pressed a button on the wall. The door slid open with a hiss. "She wishes to see you." Ethan's heart pounded as he followed the guard through the corridors. The once shining palace now showed scars of war, cracked walls, smoke, flickering lights. The sounds of distant explosions echoed through the halls. At last they entered the grand chamber, where Queen Seraphina stood before a floating map of the galaxy. Holograms of alien generals flickered around her, arguing about strategies. She turned when Ethan stepped inside. Her presence silenced the room. The Queen's glowing eyes studied him, calm yet curious. "You are the human janitor," she said. "Ethan." Ethan swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Majesty." "You warned me about the conduit before the explosion. You saw something others did not." I just followed the wires," he said, rubbing his hands. "They didn't look right. Someone rerouted your power systems. I think that's how they broke through the palace shields." The generals exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, tall and proud, sneered. "Your Majesty, this creature is not trained. Humans are primitive. He cannot know more than our engineers." But Seraphina raised her hand. And yet, he was right. The room fell silent again. She stepped closer to Ethan. Her glowing armor reflected in his eyes. "You saw betrayal in our walls," she said softly. "Tell me, human. How?" Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to sound foolish, but he told her anyway. How he noticed the strange flickering conduit, how the drones reacted, and how he overheard the general's secret conversation. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "You have done what no prince of the Empire has achieved. You saw the truth when others were blind." Ethan blinked. "I just fixed things. That's my job." The Queen smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why you saw it." Before he could respond, the palace shook violently again. The holograms of the generals blinked out as alarms blared through the chamber. The guard shouted, "Enemy ships have breached the outer defense ring." "Seal the city gates," one general cried. But Seraphina didn't move. Her gaze stayed fixed on Ethan. "You said the power systems were corrupted. Can you repair them?" Ethan froze. "Me? I'm not. I can try, but—" "Try," she said firmly. "The fate of my people depends on it." Within minutes, Ethan was back in the tunnels, this time escorted by 2 royal guards. The Queen herself followed, her cloak glowing softly in the dark. They reached the broken power core, a massive structure pulsing with unstable light. Sparks leapt from the cables like lightning. Ethan studied the damage. "Someone installed a signal loop," he muttered. "They're using your own energy grid as a tracker. That's how they know where to strike." The Queen stepped closer, her voice calm but urgent. "Can you stop it?" "I'll need to disconnect the main junction," he said, "but if I'm wrong, it could blow the whole palace." "Do it," she said. "I trust you." He looked at her in disbelief. "You trust a janitor?" Seraphina's eyes glowed brighter. "I trust the one who saved my life." Ethan swallowed and began working. His hands shook as he rewired the conduits, sparks flying across his face. The heat was unbearable, but he didn't stop. The Queen watched silently, her armor reflecting the unstable light. Finally, with a deep breath, he pulled the last connector. The entire palace went dark. For 3 seconds there was nothing. No light, no sound. Then the energy grid flared back to life, brighter than before. The alarms stopped. The holographic systems rebooted, and when the palace shields came back online, the attacking fleet's signals vanished from the radar. It worked, Ethan gasped, panting. The Queen looked at him with quiet wonder. "You have done it." One of the guards whispered. The human saved Auralis. But before anyone could speak again, the main holoscreen lit up, showing the enemy leader's image. A dark figure cloaked in shadows, eyes glowing red. His voice hissed through the chamber. "So this is the Queen's new champion," he sneered. "A human janitor. How far the mighty have fallen." The Queen's face remained calm, but her tone was steel. "You will find humanity is full of surprises." The figure laughed. Then the screen went dark. Ethan looked at Serafina, still breathing hard. "Who was that?" Her expression darkened. "A ghost from our past," she said. "And he knows we are not ready for what comes next." Outside, the sky burned with war. Inside, a bond neither of them expected had begun to form, between a queen of stars and a human who refused to run. The night over Auralis burned red. From the highest towers one could see the enemy ships like black stars moving across the sky. Their shadows fell over the shining city, and the people whispered prayers to the Queen. But deep inside the palace, Ethan stood beside a window, staring at the storm outside. He had never seen war from this close before. Back on Earth he had been invisible, just another worker trying to survive. But here, among aliens and fire, he had become something else. The door behind him slid open with a soft hiss. Queen Serafina entered, her glowing armor dimmed now, her face calm yet thoughtful. She looked almost human in that light, and that surprised him. "You did well today," she said softly. "Because of you, our shields hold." Ethan smiled awkwardly. "I just fixed a few wires." The Queen tilted her head slightly. "You fixed hope, human. That is harder than repairing metal." They stood in silence for a moment. The air carried the faint hum of energy from the palace heart. Ethan glanced at her and hesitated. "That man on the hollow, the one who spoke to you." He called himself a ghost. "Who is he?" Serafina's expression darkened. "His name is Malakar. Once he was one of us, a prince of the royal house. He was meant to rule beside me, but he failed my test." "Test?" Ethan asked. She turned to the window. "Every heir to the Auralis Empire must face the royal test. A challenge not of strength but of heart. I give them power and see how they use it. Every prince sought glory, control, or revenge. None understood the true meaning of leadership. Malakar was the last. And he turned against us. So that's what this war is?" Ethan asked quietly. "Revenge?" "Yes," she said bitterly. "He seeks to destroy everything that refused to kneel before him." Ethan frowned. "And now you're fighting a war against your own?" She looked at him then, and for the first time her eyes seemed sad. The test was meant to protect us from pride. Instead, it created a monster. Before Ethan could respond, the palace lights flickered again. A voice came through the intercom. "Your Majesty, the outer defenses are breaking. We need your command." Serafina straightened. "Prepare the royal fleet," she ordered. "We hold them at the gates." Ethan watched as she turned to leave, her energy armor lighting up again. But something inside him refused to stay silent. "Wait," he said. "You're walking into a trap. Malakar knows your moves. He's inside your systems. I can feel it." The guards tensed at his words, but the Queen raised her hand. "Explain." Ethan pointed to the palace energy lines glowing through the walls. "Your defenses are connected to your power grid. He used that once, he'll use it again. You need to cut off the signal completely." "Cut off the grid?" one general barked. "That would leave us blind." Ethan nodded. "Yes, but it'll leave him blind too." The Queen stared at him for a long moment, weighing the choice. Then she nodded. "Do it." Within minutes, the command center filled with movement. Engineers shouted orders, guards carried data cores, and Ethan worked beside alien technicians, pulling cables and rerouting power. For the first time, they treated him like an equal. As they worked, Serafina moved through the chaos with calm grace. Every time she passed, soldiers bowed. Yet Ethan noticed something in her eyes. Not fear, not pride, but a quiet sadness. He finally asked, "Why do you stay here when you could escape? You're their queen. They'd follow you anywhere." She looked at him and said, "A queen who runs is no queen at all. My test was to find someone who understood that." Ethan blinked. "You mean you're still testing people?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. Perhaps the universe is testing me now." Before he could answer, an explosion shook the entire palace. The main shield dome cracked, light spilling like liquid fire through the halls. The air filled with smoke and sparks. The intercom screamed, "Enemy forces have landed inside the city." Serafina drew a glowing blade from her wrist armor. The energy pulsed through the room like thunder. "To the gates," she commanded. The soldiers rushed out. Ethan followed without thinking. They ran through burning corridors past broken statues and fallen guards. Outside, the once golden streets were covered in ash. The sky above burned with ships descending like dragons of fire. Ethan grabbed a fallen communicator and tried to call the defense units. Come on. But all he heard was static. "Malachar has jammed the signals," Serafina said, stepping beside him. Her blue armor shone in the flames. "He is here." As if summoned by her words, a black ship descended in front of the palace gates. It landed with a roar, the metal glowing red-hot. From its shadow, a tall figure emerged, Malachar himself. His armor was dark as night, his eyes burning crimson. "Sister," he said, voice cold as ice. "You once judged me unworthy. Today I return the favor." Ethan felt his heart race. The air seemed to freeze. Serafina stepped forward unafraid. "You failed because you sought only power," she said. "And now you seek to prove me right." Malachar smiled cruelly. "And yet your empire burns. Tell me, Queen, who failed now?" Ethan looked from one to the other. The Queen of Light facing the Prince of Darkness. Two gods of the same world, and between them one human who didn't belong. But as the energy blades ignited and the air cracked with thunder, Ethan realized something terrifying. The Queen had said every prince failed her test, but she had never said the test was over. Maybe, he thought, it had only just begun. The wind roared through the broken towers of Auralis. Dust and fire swirled around the palace like a living storm. Ethan stood frozen as the two royal figures faced each other, the Queen of Light and the Prince of Shadows. Malachar's dark armor pulsed with crimson veins of energy, each pulse echoing like a heartbeat of anger. Behind him, hundreds of shadow soldiers emerged from the smoke, their armor black as void. Serafina raised her glowing blade. The light from it spread across the courtyard, reflecting off the broken stones. Her voice carried over the chaos. "You don't have to do this, Malachar. You were once my brother in the stars." Malachar's laughter was low and sharp. "Brother? You made me your rival, Serafina. You gave me a test no one could pass. You failed because you sought power," she said. He stepped closer, eyes burning. "And you failed because you believed love was weakness." Before she could reply, he thrust his hand forward. A blast of red energy shot across the courtyard. The ground exploded, sending soldiers flying. Ethan ducked behind a broken pillar as shards of stone whizzed past his head. The battle began. Alien soldiers clashed, blades of light cutting through the air. Explosions shook the sky as ships above exchanged fire. The entire city became a storm of light and darkness. Ethan crawled from cover, heart pounding. He wasn't a soldier, just a janitor with dirty hands and a racing heart. But something inside him refused to hide. He saw palace guards falling, systems failing, power conduits overloading. If the energy grid went unstable again, the whole palace could collapse. He sprinted toward the nearest junction, sparks flying under his feet. "If I can stabilize the core, maybe the shields will hold," he muttered. But before he could reach the control panel, a shadow soldier blocked his path. Its eyes glowed red and it raised a plasma spear. Ethan froze. Then a flash of silver light cut through the air. The soldier fell, its armor sliced clean in half. Queen Serafina landed beside Ethan, her blade humming. "Stay behind me," she said firmly. "I'm trying to fix the core," he shouted over the explosions. "Then move quickly." She turned, parrying another strike. Sparks flew as her sword met Malachar's dark blade. Their movements were like lightning, every hit shaking the ground. Ethan could hardly breathe as he crawled toward the broken control panel. His hands moved fast, pulling wires, rerouting power, patching systems with anything he could find. "You can't win," Malachar roared. "Your people are weak. Then why are you afraid of them?" Serafina shot back, pushing him away with a blast of blue light. Ethan saw the reading spike. "Almost there," he muttered. Just a few more seconds, the ground shook violently. A massive shadow ship descended from the clouds, aiming straight for the palace dome. Its weapons glowed red. "Oh no," Ethan whispered. "It's going to fire." Serafina turned and saw it too. Her eyes widened. She pressed a hand to her armor and shouted into her communicator. "All units focus fire on the main ship." But it was too late. The enemy cannon charged. Ethan looked at the control core. He could overload it, redirect the palace's energy shield upward. But that would drain all power from the palace and maybe destroy it completely. Still, it was their only chance. He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," he whispered. He slammed the emergency switch. A blinding light erupted from the palace towers, rising like a pillar of fire. The shield burst upward just as the enemy cannon fired. The two forces collided in midair, creating a shockwave that tore across the sky. The blast was deafening. When the light faded, the massive shadow ship was gone, destroyed. But so was the palace shield. The city below lay in silence. The warships drifting like ghosts. Ethan fell to his knees, smoke rising around him. His ears rang, his body aching. Then he heard footsteps. Serafina walked toward him, her armor dimmed, eyes glowing faintly. She looked exhausted but alive. "You did that?" Ethan coughed and nodded weakly. "Yeah, I think we're still standing." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. A small, rare smile. "You saved us again, human." He smiled back, but then her face changed. Her expression darkened. "Wait," she whispered. "Where is Malachar?" The smoke cleared, and there he was, standing on the far side of the courtyard, armor cracked but still glowing with red fury. His eyes locked on Ethan. "You think this ends with me defeated?" He hissed. "No, human. You are the reason she fails." Before Ethan could react, Malachar raised his blade and hurled a spear of dark energy straight at him. Serafina moved faster than anyone thought possible. She threw herself in front of him. The energy struck her chest and she fell to the ground. "No!" Ethan shouted, catching her as she collapsed. Her body glowed weakly, light fading from her armor. Malachar's voice echoed through the smoke. "Now you will understand loss, sister." Ethan looked up at him, rage burning in his eyes. For the first time, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel like a janitor. He felt human, and that meant something more. He turned to the fallen queen. "Hold on," he whispered. She opened her eyes slightly, her voice soft. "Ethan, the test." "What test?" he said desperately. Her lips trembled in a faint smile. "You're taking it now." Then her eyes closed and her hand slipped from his. Ethan looked up at the burning sky. His jaw tightened. For the first time, he wasn't running, he was standing. And somewhere deep inside, something ancient and powerful awakened. The world around Ethan burned like a dying star. Flames licked the palace walls and smoke choked the air. The Queen of Auralis lay motionless in his arms. Her silver blue armor cracked, her glowing crown dimming with every second. "Come on, stay with me," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "You can't die. Not like this." Her breathing was weak, her eyes half open. She looked at him, not with fear, but with a strange peace. "You have already done more than anyone," she whispered. "No," Ethan said firmly. "I'm not done yet." He looked around wildly. The palace was falling apart. The royal guards were gone, the sky filled with smoke and light. Malachar stood above them on the broken stairs, his dark armor gleaming with cruel satisfaction. "This is how your empire ends," Malachar said coldly. "A queen dying in the arms of a slave." Ethan glared up at him. "She's not dead." "Not yet." Malachar raised his hand. "She trusted a human janitor to save her world." How poetic, and how foolish. Ethan lowered the queen gently to the ground, then stood. His clothes were torn, his hands blackened with ash, but his eyes burned with a fire Malachar had never seen before. "You think power makes you strong," Ethan said, his voice shaking but clear. "But I've seen real strength. It's not in your weapons or your crown. It's in the people who keep fighting even when everything's broken." Malachar laughed, a deep, bitter sound. "You are nothing, a human ant crawling among gods." Ethan looked down at the queen one last time and something inside him clicked. He reached into her armor and found a small glowing crystal, pulsing faintly. He remembered how she once told him that every royal carried their energy core, a piece of their soul. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," he whispered. He pulled the crystal free. The palace trembled as the light spread across his arm, wrapping around him like fire. The energy felt alive, burning, heavy, powerful, yet not cruel. It was her essence, her will, her trust. Malakar's eyes widened. "What have you done?" Ethan looked up. His body shimmered with blue light. "You said I was nothing." "Let's find out," Malakar roared and charged. Their clash shook the air. His red blade met Ethan's glowing energy in a burst of color. Sparks flew like stars colliding. Ethan could barely keep his footing, but he refused to fall. Every strike from Malakar pushed him back, but each time he rose again. His muscles screamed, his bones ached, but something inside him refused to give up. "Why do you fight?" Malakar shouted. "You gain nothing from this." "Because she believed in me," Ethan yelled, parrying another blow. "And because I'm human and we don't stop when someone needs us." He struck back, his energy surging brighter with every word. The blue light spread across the courtyard, tearing through the smoke. The fallen soldiers looked up in awe as the human and the dark prince fought like living storms. Malakar screamed in rage and unleashed a massive wave of red energy. It hit Ethan square in the chest, throwing him across the courtyard. He crashed into the ground, breath knocked out of him. The energy crystal dimmed, flickering weakly. Malakar approached, blade raised high. "You are done, human." Ethan coughed, blood on his lips. But when he looked up, his eyes were steady. "Maybe, but I'm not alone." Behind him, the crystal in his hand glowed brighter, brighter than ever before. A familiar voice echoed softly in his mind. "Do not let him break you, Ethan. The test is not over." He gasped. "Seraphina." The light from the crystal spread across his body, lifting him from the ground. The air filled with energy. The queen's voice continued, stronger now. "Every prince failed because they fought for power, but you fight for something greater." Ethan's feet touched the ground again. He stood tall, his body surrounded by a radiant blue aura. "For her people," he said quietly. "For hope." Malakar snarled and swung his blade again, but this time Ethan caught it mid-strike. The red energy sputtered against his light. Ethan's voice was calm. "You failed her test, Malakar, because you never understood what it was about." With one last surge of strength, he pushed forward. The energy burst between them like lightning, throwing Malakar backward. The prince screamed as his armor cracked, light pouring out from within. Then, silence. Malakar fell to his knees, his power fading. "How?" he gasped. "How could a human defeat me?" Ethan stood over him, exhausted but unbroken. "Because I didn't fight to win. I fought to protect." Malakar's eyes flickered with disbelief and then went dark. His body dissolved into ashes, carried away by the wind. Ethan dropped to his knees, the blue light fading from his hands. The crystal pulsed one last time before shattering into glowing dust. He turned to where the queen lay and froze. Her body was gone. In her place, a trail of light floated upward, forming a faint silhouette. Seraphina's voice echoed softly in the air. "You have passed the test, Ethan. The heart of leadership is not in strength, but in sacrifice." He reached toward the light, tears in his eyes. "Don't leave," her voice was gentle. "I'm not leaving. I am becoming part of what you saved." The light drifted into the sky, fading among the stars. Ethan sat in silence, surrounded by ruins and ash. The war was over, but so was something deeper. He looked up at the night sky, whispering, "I hope you're watching, Your Majesty." The stars shimmered, as if answering him. Days passed, then weeks. The war that had burned through the stars finally came to an end. The shadow fleets were gone. The skies of Auralis were clear again, glowing with the soft blue light of dawn. But the palace still stood in ruins, silent, broken, and empty. At the center of those ruins stood Ethan. He looked nothing like the janitor he once was. His uniform was torn, his face marked by dust and fire, but his eyes were alive, bright with something the aliens had never seen before. Human will. The soldiers who survived gathered around him. They looked at him not with pity but with respect. In their eyes, he was not a servant anymore. He was the one who had saved their world. One alien captain stepped forward. "The Queen is gone," he said quietly. "But her spirit remains in the sky. She chose you, human. You carry her light now." Ethan didn't answer. He simply nodded and turned to look at the sunrise. The light reflected off the broken marble, and for a moment he could almost hear her voice again. "The test is never about who rules. It is about who protects." He closed his eyes. The words stayed with him. That day, Ethan began rebuilding. He worked beside soldiers, engineers, and civilians. He didn't command them. He helped them just like before. He fixed power grids, cleaned the shattered halls, repaired systems no one else could understand. Everywhere he went, people followed his example. They worked not because they were ordered to, but because they wanted to. The city began to heal, and with it so did the hearts of its people. Soon stories began to spread across the galaxy. They called him the Human of Auralis. Some said he was a warrior blessed by the stars. Others said he was chosen by the Queen herself. But Ethan never claimed titles or glory. He only smiled and said, "I was just doing my job." One evening, while standing on the balcony of the half-rebuilt palace, Ethan saw something glowing in the sky, a cluster of stars forming a faint shape. It looked like her, the Queen. He felt her presence in the wind. "Hey," he whispered, "you'd be proud of them. They're stronger now. You were right. Hope was the real power." The stars shimmered softly as if they heard him. Then a small child, an alien girl with glowing blue eyes, tugged at his sleeve. "Is it true?" she asked shyly. "You were just a janitor before?" Ethan smiled gently. "Yes, I was. And the Queen? She chose you?" He looked at the stars again and nodded. "She didn't choose me because I was strong. She chose me because I cared." The child smiled. "Then one day I'll take her test too." Ethan crouched down and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You already are. Every day you help someone, every time you choose kindness instead of pride, Magnan, that's the real test." The girl's eyes lit up. "Then I'll pass." He laughed softly. "I know you will." Years later, songs were written about that day and the day a human janitor saved an empire. They said the Queen's final act was to see through every prince's failure and find the one being who understood what leadership truly meant. And when people asked who that human was, what great hero he must have been, the stories always ended the same way. He was just a man who refused to give up.